I'm Linda Coles, and this is Tell Us a Story. Linda Guirey is one of the most respected and sought-after experts on mindset and changing the way we think. She's an inspiring and compelling international speaker and trainer who transforms and inspires people and organisations from the inside out. Over the last 16 years, she's spoken to thousands of people and has received many awards in recognition of her work, including being voted Best Speaker in New Zealand for 2012, and that was the Corporate Events People's Choice Awards. She's also the winner of a Gowor International Publishing Award for 2016 for her very first book, Reflections in the Face of Change. She's also a past president of the Auckland Chapter of the National Speakers Association of New Zealand. Linda inspires people to really look at how they are making choices, to learn to resist making judgments and assumptions, and how we can achieve our goals, outcomes and passions in life all through the choices we make. Linda will also be sharing a very personal story that changed her life completely throughout the podcast, so stay tuned and listen for more. So let's go straight in and say welcome to the show, Linda Guirey. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Linda.
Excellent. Well, I mean, I used to be a member of National Speakers Association some time ago, and it's been a little while since you and I caught up. So thanks for coming on the show. This is a real privilege to have you on.
Thank you.
So let's start, I don't know, when you were about 18. Tell us what Linda Guirey was doing there. Where was she and what was she up to?
Well, if I can go back that far, Linda Guirey at 18 was very much on a journey. I had just finished a year as a Rotary Exchange student, and I went to upstate New York. And that was probably where I first started really understanding how people are different, how they live different lives, they have different beliefs. It was an amazing year away, but it really opened my mind more to accepting other people rather than judging them. I think that's where the seed was planted, the seed of sort of acceptance. And then after that, because I'd spent a year away, all I wanted to do was travel, really. So at 18, I had itchy feet.
Did you go to some pretty cool places?
I did what most people did back in the late 70s, early 80s, as I went to Australia, and a lot of people then get stuck there because Australia is close to New Zealand, but it had so much more to offer. And although I've travelled since then, I did end up in Australia for some years. And that's when I fell into my the job I loved back then, which was veterinary nursing.
Oh.
I got a job as a veterinary nurse without much experience. I had done weekend stuff in Auckland, and I became head nurse of a large veterinary practice in Sydney, and reared a joey. We treated an echidna, bats, you name it. All kinds of animals came past our doorstep, which was just awesome.
So that will be one of the reasons why one of the other things that you do, that I was going to come on to a little bit later, but might as well, you've just segued nicely into it, is you do pet first aid.
Yes, it was probably about three to 4 years ago. I was at a networking event, and these two ladies were talking about their new business venture, which was setting up pet first aid and training. And my ears pricked up because I hadn't done veterinary nursing since I came back from Australia, and my ears pricked up, and I thought, I wonder if they're looking for trainers. So I had a quick word afterwards and said, are you looking for contract trainers? And they said, oh yes, we want somebody with veterinary nursing experience. Yeehaw. So that's just something I do every now and again. It's just a small bit of what I do, but because I love it so much, I just, it's a weekend thing. They tell me when they're running classes, and I teach people how to do CPR, how to stop their pet from choking, how to bandage, how to stem, serious blood flow, what to do if an animal's been hit by a car, how to get them to the vet in the best possible condition to get the best possible outcome.
Which is a good skill to have, because many of us have fur babies and they're important parts of our lives, aren't they? I mean, if my pussycat got knocked over by a car, I don't know what I would do. So it's a good skill to have. So are those public courses?
They are public courses. The Pet First Aid and Training have their website. If you just Googled Pet First Aid and Training New Zealand, and it lists where, because they're quite national now, and they list where all the classes are and the dates, and it is a wonderful skill to have, because it really takes out the panic when you've actually been trained what to do. And a lot of the skills can be used on people and vice versa, and it's just so good to have that basic understanding that you can take a step back and go, okay, what are the basics, what do I need to do?
Yeah. I'll probably be looking that up myself, actually. So, obviously on your travels and working around Australia, being a vet nurse, etc., there must have been some big influences in your life. Were there any particular people that had a strong influence in your life? Maybe not even family members, maybe somebody else?
Well, I think my father was a big influence, both positive and negative. And it's interesting because as a positive influence, he was a very successful businessman. He had a lot of knowledge, did a lot of reading. He was on lots of boards. He was well respected. And he was also an incredible opera singer. And just the way he could speak to audiences, the way he could run organizations, be on boards. I had a lot of respect for him. On the flip side, he was quite a distant father. So, sadly he's not with us anymore, but he was quite dominant and quite controlling. And I think he taught me a lot about what I didn't want to be like as a parent, which I see as a positive. Like he taught me things that I thought, actually, that's not how I want to raise my kids. But I don't see it as something. He did the best that he could in the times that he had. And so I have a lot of respect for him, and I think he was a big influence in my life in many different ways.
So do you think that's where you got your sort of arty side from, with him opera singing?
I think so. I think there's, both my parents were opera singers. So I could have been, but my father told me he was going to teach me, and so I decided not to.
Because I know you do a bit of improv, don't you?
I do, and that's, perhaps that's a skill that I got from him as well. But I love being on the stage in various ways. Improv's very challenging, but it gives you such a high when things come together and you don't expect it, and that's what I love about improv, the unexpected. So
now you're on the stage in a different manner. You're not opera singing and you're not doing improv, but professional speaking and training. How did you get into that?
Well, that again it's a journey. I had been in management for a long time. I had been doing presentations in my various roles, and then in about 2007 I got the job as training manager for a large domestic violence agency, and I was creating and delivering training programs, creating an awareness, going into workplaces. And the more I did, the more I thought, actually, I could do more, but it wasn't within my brief as an employee. And so in 2010, I thought, actually, I could bite the bullet and see if I can make this on my own. And that, as setting up your own business, it's a roller coaster, but I haven't looked back. Like, it's just, I love doing what I do, and I love being responsive to the current climate and what people need, and how we can actually help people in workplaces get along a lot better, which will increase productivity, but it just helps people in general.
So how did you come up with the main focus, what you're going to talk about? Because when I did public speaking, it was natural that it was social media. That's what I work in, so that's what I spoke on. So how did you choose your topic? Was it something close to your heart?
Well, initially, I was talking about communication styles, because I saw in workplaces that people just, didn't communicate well. They made judgments about other people. And so that sort of part of the mindset was really early on. And I talked about communication styles and how we are all different. But then probably a couple of years later, so it might have been, I don't know, 2011 or 12, I wrote an article about something that had happened in my life, and you referred to it earlier as my story. I wrote an article for an online website just because I felt it might have been of interest. And I got so many people contacting me, including other speakers and speaker bureaus, asking me if I talked about it, which I didn't. And I sat down and thought, why don't I? But at that point, I didn't think it was important. I didn't think it was something that people would want to know. So then I had to go through a little bit of a journey myself to really understand if I could share it, how did it fit. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized that had shaped who I was. That had shaped why I did what I did. And it had a big part to play. So it forms part of what I talk about, but it's not the only thing. It just makes me more credible when I share it, I guess.
Well, if you don't mind, let's go through that story now, because I know when I first heard it, I was sat open-mouthed. Was not what I was expecting to come out. So, if you don't mind,
does take people by surprise.
I must say it's a very serious story, so I shouldn't laugh.
No, it's fine. Like, it's absolutely fine. And it goes back to my first marriage, and I'd been happily married and we had 3 kids, and we had moved to Great Barrier Island, and that's an interesting move in itself, but we both wanted to move there and see what we could do as a job. We set up a cafe. It was a great place to bring up 3 small kids, and the cafe was very successful. And one day on the island, my husband told me that he had something really serious to tell me, and then the next 6 words that came out of his mouth were, well, just stopped me in my tracks. And he told me, I want to become a woman. And my world just went into a spin. It stopped. It went in slow motion. It just felt like this biggest weight had crashed down, and I didn't know what to do. And through looking back on what I did, I was able to put it into some order that can help other people overcome adversity. So I was faced with the fact that I was still in love with my husband, but I had this information that I didn't know what to do with. And I went through a process which I now call my brave decision-making process. I went through a process, and the B stands for my beliefs, because at the time I had to say, what am I telling myself about this? What do I truly understand about it? What is my internal dialogue? And the R stands for rational, because I actually didn't want to make a decision without getting all the information about what this meant. And I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant for the future. I didn't know where it was going to go. So the only place I could get information certainly wasn't from friends or family. I had to go to the transgendered community. And so that's where I went. It was outside my comfort zone, but to be true to myself and to make the right decision as to what I was going to do next, I needed information. And I went to the transgendered community and got lots of questions answered. I met lots of wonderful people and was able to just then understand what I was dealing with. Then the A for brave is authentic, and I needed the courage to make a decision that was right for me, not a decision that other people expected me to make. And that was the hard part, because most of my life up until that point, I had often asked myself, what would my father think? What would my father do? And when I look back, I think, well, whose life was I living if I was constantly sort of saying, what would my father do? And at this point, I knew I had to make a decision that was right for me and the kids, not a decision that was right for anybody else. And then the V was understanding my values and what were my highest values, because I believe that when life gets really tough, you have to satisfy your highest values and sometimes let the others go. And if you don't know what they are, you're making decisions that perhaps you're not going to live comfortably with or aren't going to work out for you. So I needed to explore that, and then I needed to understand that my emotions were all over the place. And I had anger, I had resentment, I had shock, I had all kinds of things running through. And I knew that the only thing that would help me was also time. I needed time to go through that whole process I just explained and come out the other side with some idea of what I was going to do next. And I went back to my husband and I said, look, I'm going to stand by you, because we were best friends as well as, husband and wife. I'm going to stand by you, but it's one day at a time. However, our marriage is over. And with that, it meant that, I am a heterosexual woman, and I needed to make that really clear that the relationship of marriage was no longer going to be the same. We stayed officially married, but we were like sisters rather than husband and wife. And I needed quite a bit of time to grieve the loss of my husband, because that's exactly what happened. He disappeared, and somebody else was in his place, and that was a woman, and the kids had to learn that they had an aunt instead of a dad, and that was a difficult process in itself. But we stayed together for another 7 years after that, and it was me, the kids, and an aunt, and very happy. And I have to say, it was a very happy relationship. But it was very happy because we were very open about our feelings. We talked to the kids all the time about how they were coping, what was going on for them, and they were my priority. If it wasn't going to work for them, it wasn't going to work for me.
So what sort of age would they be when you found out?
So my daughter, she was the youngest, and she was 6. So it was sort of like 6, 8, and 10, or 6, 8, and 9. Reasonably young. And at school, so that had an impact as well. There were going to be issues that, people talk, kids can be nasty.
Yeah.
And I made a conscious effort to involve the schools as much as possible. So I went to the schools, I spoke to the principals, I spoke to the teachers, I explained everything, I told them how I wanted them to respond, when to let me know. And although I didn't, the kids from time to time got bullied, they pretty much got through their school years unscathed because of it. But that took a lot of time from me, sort of just running behind the scenes, even speaking to some of my kids' best friends' parents to ensure that my children weren't going to suffer unduly for the decisions that I'd made.
So I can see how that made you decide to talk about mindset, because mindset really it's about your own choices, how you cope with something, what you decide to do, the positives, your belief about yourself and your potential. Would that
Yes.
be about right? Yeah.
Yep. It is very much about understanding the negative thoughts and where they come from, what serves you and what doesn't. And it also, I learned because of the decision I had made to stay with my first husband, when he decided to transition, I lost some family members who didn't agree with that decision, found it too much to cope with. And that shocked me, mainly because I thought that's when family is supposed to gather round.
Yeah.
But I experienced quite the opposite. And through just doing reading and understanding more about myself, and I realized that I can't control what other people think about the decisions I make. I can't control what other people are going to say. I can't control what other people are going to do. And there's no point in me getting upset about it, because I can't control it. I can just try and understand it, but not let it unduly affect me, because there's nothing I can do about it. I can influence them maybe, but I wasn't going to then beat myself up about it or, constantly think about it. It was really something that was outside of my control. And I just had to live my life with the kids and my husband to the best that I could.
And it's no one else's business, really, is it?
No.
It's your family unit, and how you choose to cope with it and what you do about that. And it doesn't matter what anybody thinks, whoever they are.
That's exactly right. I mean, everybody seems to have an opinion about so many things, and you see it today, and it's in workplaces and it's everywhere, that we judge people based on who we think they are, not on who they are, because we don't know them very well. And there's just so much of it, and that's something that I like to try and get people to understand more about their own judgments, their own assumptions they're making, and how they can avoid those, so that they don't get dragged into that and they don't end up being negative or being unduly affected by it. There's so much that I don't get upset about anymore, and it's really, really freeing. It's really freeing.
I can imagine it is.
Yes.
So mindset's quite an in word, and another word that we hear a lot of is mindfulness, and the two are very, very different.
Yes.
I suppose from my limited understanding, I suppose you might be someone better to talk about it, but mindset is more about the belief of yourself and your potential, and mindfulness is your own sort of relationship with your awareness, I suppose. Would that be what you'd say?
Yes, I think that's it. Mindfulness is very much about being self-aware and being in the moment, whether that's through meditation or whatever you want to do. I think mindfulness is being very aware of your own thinking, your thoughts, and self-aware and mindset. Mindfulness has a part to play in mindset, because mindset is about your beliefs and judgments of other people, and how you conduct yourself, and how you respond to the outside world. And, if you're more self-aware, you're going to have a better chance, I guess, at having a more positive mindset, a more open mindset.
What do you love most about what you do now, then? Because you work with some pretty big companies and you've spoken to some pretty big audiences.
I think what I love is people coming to me and saying, wow, I can apply this in my own situation. I've going through a difficult situation myself, and I can use this, and knowing that in some small way, whether it's just one person in every audience I speak to, if in some small way I've helped people overcome some difficulties and smooth the waters and improve relationships, then it's all been worth it. And for me, it's, if I can just make people more kind to each other, that would be great.
It sounds so simple, doesn't it? If we all did it, unfortunately we don't all do it, and that's why things get a little bit upside down, topsy-turvy. So where do you see yourself in another 5 years, maybe, or even 10 years? Do you think that far ahead? Do you plan that far ahead? I don't know if many people do, really.
I don't really plan. I'm not a good planner anyway. I'm quite sort of responsive and like to be in the now. But if I looked at 5 or 10 years, because I like doing art, and I like doing calligraphy, and I like writing. I'd like to write more books. I'd like to do more art, a little bit of speaking, but I would probably tone the speaking back and just do more of what I love. I've got now 2 grandchildren, and they're very young and very new. I'm a grandmother. That's probably the most important role for me. Other than being a mother and a wife, but a grandmother for new growing identities that perhaps being a grandparent I can have some role in, and shape them, and just create awesome new beings. I just love being a grandmother.
So where are you at now with your relationship? Have you remarried? May I ask?
Yes. I remarried. I found my new husband on an internet dating site while he was looking for a car. So he got a wife instead of a car.
Slightly more expensive.
And at the time, I forgot to do my maths, because he had 3 kids and I had 3 kids. So we ended up with 6 teenagers in the house, which was a challenging experience. And that's where also I learned about, just being more accepting of difference in the way that people are brought up, because not everybody thinks like you do, and the controlling side of people, we like to try and make people do what we want rather than accepting that they're quite different. But yeah, so I got remarried, and we've been really happy. We got remarried 2007, and now seeing grandchildren coming along is just perfect. It's just beautiful, and I'm able to, which I love about being in my own job, in my own business, I love being able to do lots of the things I enjoy and pulling it all together. So the pet first aid, I can do that, speaking to audiences about mindset. I also do quite a lot for the health and disability sector because I've also worked in that sector, and so I can pick and choose, and the variety and using all my skills, I never thought I could bring them all together, but hey, I did, and that's what I love.
Well, it sounds like you've come full circle, and you've found happiness again.
Yes.
With six children. You gained 3 along the way. So I'm surprised you get any time with grandchildren running around to do your art and your improv and everything else. So are you managing to read anything? Are you a reader? And if so, what are you currently reading?
I read from time to time. I'd love to read more, but you're absolutely right. Like it's finding the time, and what am I going to do in that downtime if I have any? I'm reading a novel at the moment, which is called The Book of Fires, and it's about creating fireworks. It's a very interesting novel, but I usually go from a novel to a non-fiction. Mm-hmm. I am interested in exploring art, creativity and mindset and art and how it shapes how we think. So I've got several books on that I think I will be picking up next. So, yeah. Do
you think you'll write another book or write a book on those subjects?
I've got a book that I'm currently writing, and it's actually about my animal stories from being a veterinary nurse. So it's a humorous lots of little short stories, but also what we can learn from our interactions with animals and what we can learn from animals. So there's a little bit of moral along the way, but very hilarious stories.
Well, I'll just share a very quick story of mine, actually, now you've just mentioned that, because we've recently just added to our goat family. We had Brittany, and now we've got 4 more. So suddenly the dynamics in the paddock has changed considerably. And Steve and Brittany they're the older ones, and Maddie, Julie and Lloyd are the younger ones. And we've very much got a 2 and a 3. Particularly when Paul and I are in the paddock. So I don't quite know why that's happened. When we're not there, they all get on like a house on fire, and they'll all sit together and they'll all graze together. But as soon as my husband and I go into the paddock, they seem to split off. We've got the old poke that aren't that old. She's only 2.5 and 4.5. And then the 6 and 8 month olds, keeping themselves to themselves. And I often wonder why those dynamics are like that. You'd probably be able to tell me.
That's really interesting, and it's obviously the influence that you have if they all get on like a house on fire. That's hilarious. I'm not quite sure what influence you were having on that particular dynamic.
No, me neither. It's a bit worrying.
Oh, that's awesome.
So what's one piece of advice you'd like to leave everybody with on absolutely anything at all?
Probably just... I think the piece of advice is that you are responsible for your life, for everything. You are responsible for how you respond to it. Nobody can make you feel anything. That's an inside job, but boy, is it easy to blame other people. And when I really realised that it is an inside job and you are totally responsible, it does change how you respond to things if you take responsibility. And I think, if people can really understand that they are responsible for their life in its totality, and for everything they say and everything they do. And the last thing is I just want people to be kind to each other and kind to everything. Like it's, kindness, it might be a word that's thrown around, but if you really think about it and every day say, how can I be more kind? It changes who you are.
And sometimes we are the kindest to strangers in our lives and not the people that are close to us in our lives.
Yes, so true, yeah.
Which I find quite fascinating and weird at the same time. I don't quite know how that can be, but I've noticed I do it myself, and I am quite conscious of that. So where can people find you, Linda? Where can they find out more?
Well, I have a website which, just Google Linda Guirey, and Guirey is spelled Guirey, but I have a website which is lindaguirey.co.nz. Also, you can find me on Facebook. It's a name that's not very common, so any Google search, and I'm in the first, it's great because I'm in the first, 10 or 11 pages of Google, thanks to my name. So, yes, or people can email me if they want more information, which is linda@lindaguirey.co.nz.
Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing your story, Linda, and I'd like to wish you the best of luck, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed catching up with you and, having this interview. It's been great.
You've been listening to Tell Us a Story. Why not subscribe or rate us next time you're on iTunes?